Happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome back to another Team Player Gaming video. Today I've got another teamwork build video for you guys, and what better way to celebrate Halloween than with a build that's all about fear. Let's get started. We are even going creepy with our ancestry. If this combination of ancestry and heritage doesn't creep out people, what this build does will. For our ancestry, we're going with the Flesh Warp ancestry. And as if that wasn't creepy enough, we're also going to go with the Damn Fear heritage. For our first ancestry feat, we're going to go with Startling Appearance. This build is all about fear, so we need intimidation, and getting Intimidating Glare for free will be awesome. At 5th level, we'll be taking Gaping Flesh. Not only is this going to pair well with some of our other abilities we're going to take later on in this video, but it's also incredibly creepy, which is kind of what we're going for in this build. For our 9th level ancestry feat, we want to take Enthralling Allure. We're not always going to be able to rely on our fear effects, especially outside of combat. This will give us Charm as an innate spell once a day. So out of combat, if fear doesn't work, then we can charm them into doing what we want. At 13th level, we're going to take Spew Tentacles. This will allow us to cast Black Tentacles once a day. This is definitely a melee build, so having enemies in Black Tentacles that we can move in without being grabbed is going to help us hit. Our last ancestry feat for this build is going to be Augment Senses. With this build, we don't want our enemies getting away from us. So, this will allow us to better search for them, as well as hidden objects. It also means if we spend an action, we can't be flanked anymore. This also means that we'll be able to tell our allies about hidden enemies more often. Our background for this build is going to be the Bounty Hunter background. This will give us the Experience Tracker skill feat for free. As I said before, we don't want our enemies to get away from us. That means we need to be able to track them. Our class for this build is going to be the Champion, and our cause is going to be the Tyrant. The Tyrant is by far the best cause for evil champions when it comes to teamwork. Our deity doesn't matter as long as two things are true. Number one, the deity in question allows lawful evil followers. This one is actually pretty obvious. We're going to be lawful evil, so we need a deity that will be able to take lawful evil followers. The second criteria that we need for a deity is that they have the Tyranny domain. We will need that domain for this build. Please note, like my other builds, we will be using the free archetype variant rule for this build. Now, our first class feat for this build is going to be Iron Repercussions. This is going to allow us to force our enemies to either submit to us by falling prone or take persistent mental damage. There's actually a pretty neat combo that we can do with this feat and a feat we're going to take later on. At 2nd level, we want to take Deity's Domain, and we want to choose the Tyranny Domain. This is going to give us the Touch of Obedience focus spell. This spell will allow us to make our enemies stupefied, which is going to help against spellcasters in particular. For our Divine Ally, we want to pick up the Blade Ally. We are not using a shield for this build, so Shield Ally is pointless. While Steed Ally would be good for this build as well, we need as many different ways of fearing our opponent as we can get. Blade Ally will allow us to add the Fearsome rune to our weapon. So if we critically hit, our opponents become frightened. And as I've said many times, and as some of you may know, frightened is one of the best conditions in the game, because it affects everything. For our 4th level feat, this build is all about fear. So of course we're going to be taking Aura of Despair. As long as our enemies are within 15 feet of us, this will give them a -1 penalty to their saves against fear effects. Also, as long as they're in the area, they can't reduce their frightened condition below 1. That means the moment we frighten them, as long as they're within 15 feet of us, they cannot get rid of their frightened condition. For 6th level, we want to take Cruelty. We are not always going to be able to rely on our fear effects. Cruelty will allow us to make our opponents enfeebled. This will help us against melee attackers that have high will saves. At 8th level, we want to take Greater Cruelty. Now when we use Cruelty, we can choose between Enfeebled, Clumsy, or Stupefied. Clumsy will help our party hit high AC foes. And Stupefied is the worst condition you can possibly give to a spellcaster. Stupefied means not only do they take a penalty on all their spell attacks and DCs, but they also have to roll a flat check anytime they want to cast a spell. At 10th, we're going to take Advanced Deities Domain. This is going to give us the Commanding Lash focus spell. This will allow us to make our opponent drop prone on our turn as well as theirs. We can also make them approach us, run away, stand in place, or drop something they're holding. Most of the time though, we're probably going to want to make them drop prone. But in either case, they're wasting at least one action if they fail their save. At 12th is Divine Focus. We're going to have quite a few focus spells for this build. So the quicker we can get them back, the better. And this will give us 2 focus points back whenever we refocus. Alright, at 14th level, we want to take Divine Reflexes. This will allow us to use our Iron Command more often. Also, now we'll be able to use our Gaping Flesh and our Iron Command in the same round. This means we can sicken one foe per round, and we can also use Iron Command on another foe. Or if we want to, we can use Iron Command on 2 foes. Unfortunately, with this feat, one of our reactions has to be Iron Command. Now we want to take Expand Aura. This is going to double the range of our Aura of Despair to 30 feet. Remember, as long as they're in our aura, they can't get rid of their frightened condition. That means at least a -1 to everything as long as they're in the area. Alright, 18th level feat time. If your GM allows the free archetype variant roll, then you're going to want to take Captivating Intensity here. This will give us more spells from our Captivator archetype that we're going to take later in this video. If your GM does not allow the free archetype variant roll, then you're going to want to take Attack of Opportunity here. Enemies are going to want to get out of our Aura of Despair. So why not be able to hit them as they're trying to flee? Assuming, of course, that they're in melee range. For our last class feat, if your GM allows the free archetype variant roll, then you're going to want to take Topple Foe here. This is going to allow us to trip our opponent whenever an ally hits them with a melee attack. This is a way to knock our opponents prone that they don't have a choice about. Plus, since we can do it on an ally's turn, it'll make it that much easier for them to hit on their second attack. This is another reason why we're taking Divine Reflexes. If we don't have the free archetype, we want to take Sacred Defender. This is going to give us resistance to physical damage and good effects. This is simply a way for us to stay up longer, which the longer we can stay up, the more enemies we can fear. Before we get into the free archetype feats, please note that the fear aspect of this build relies heavily on them. But that's part of the reason why this build has other teamwork options besides fear. Anyway, for our first free archetype feat, we're going to want to take the Martial Dedication. This will give us Expert in Intimidation. It will also give us a 10-foot aura that gives our allies and ourselves a +1 on saves against fear. We only want our enemies to suffer from fear effects, not our allies. So this will give ourselves and our allies a little resistance to that. At 4th level, we want to take Dread Martial Stance. To go in this stance, we must make an Intimidation check. But while we are in this stance, our Marshal's aura is going to give our allies a bonus on damage. It is also essentially going to give all of our allies the Fearsome Rune on their weapon as well. And if those enemies happen to be in our Aura of Despair, then all the better. At 6th, we want to take Cadence Call. This is going to give each of our allies within our Marshal's aura the Quicken condition. They can only use the extra action to stride. But our allies are going to have to be careful when they use that extra action. This is because if they use it, they are slowed 1 instead until the end of their following turn. Now, at 8th level, we're finally going to take our Captivator Dedication. This is going to give us trained in either Diplomacy or Deception. We will get expert if we choose one in which we're already trained. It doesn't really matter which one you choose for this. Choose whatever one fits your character better. We're actually not too interested in that part of the Captivator dedication. What we really care about are the spells we gain. We're going to gain 2 occult cantrips as innate spells. These must be from the illusion or enchantment school. We are interested in fear spells here. However, there aren't any cantrips on the occult list that give the frightened condition. This means we can choose any illusion or enchantment cantrips from the occult list. However, our next feat is going to be basic Captivator spell casting. This is when we can start taking our actual fear-based spells. At 12, we're going to take expert Captivator spell casting. This is just to give us access to more powerful fear spells. Next we have heightened captivation. This is going to make one of our Captivator spells into basically a signature spell, meaning we can heighten it to any spell level that we want, as long as the spell can be heightened to that level. We are obviously going to want to choose one of our fear spells that we use a lot. At 16th is Master Captivator spell casting. Again, this is simply so we can take more powerful fear spells. At 18th, we're going to take Look Again. With this feat, if one of our Captivator spells fails to do anything, we can cast it again. If we use this feat, and our next action is to cast an enchantment or illusion spell, but it doesn't affect any targets, then we don't lose the spell. Instead, on our next turn, we must spend the same number of actions we did before. If we don't, we lose those actions and the spell. However, we can use that spell again. But this time we lose the spell whether it works or not. This feat only works on spells that require at least one target. We want to use this on spells that we're casting against enemies that we think will probably make their save. To make them save twice, essentially. For our 20th level and last free archetype feat, we're going to take Tactical Cadence. Now when we use Cadence Call, our allies can use the extra action to stride or strike, and they don't become slowed after using the action. So it essentially gets rid of the downsides of Cadence Call. Obviously, for our Captivator spells, we're going to want to pick spells that give the frightened condition. Some spells you might take for this include Fear, Phantasmal Killer, Mirror Malefactors, or Mask of Terror. Obviously, not all of our spells are going to be able to be fear spells. However, there are plenty of enchantment and illusion spells out there that are good for teamwork besides fear spells. Anytime we can't take a fear spell, we should pick one of those up. Alright, our general feats for this build are going to be pretty basic. First we want to take Ancestral Paragon, and the feat we want to take for that is Nocturnal Charm. This is going to help us with our deception and our diplomacy checks. This is just going to help us deal with creatures outside of combat, particularly when we're in town. Then we're going to want to take the standard array of Fleet, Die Hard, and Toughness. And the last general feat we want to take is Canny Acumen for our reflex saves. We are going to be wearing heavy armor for this build, so our dexterity is not going to be good. This will give us master proficiency in it eventually, so we will have master in all saves. For our skill feats, we're obviously going to need as many intimidation skill feats as we can get. Some intimidation feats we might take include Intimidating Prowess, Battle Cry, and Scare to Death. But we're also going to want to be high in medicine too. We are a Damphir. We're not going to be able to rely on magical healing. Plus, having medicine will also allow us to heal our allies. For this skill, we're going to want to take the basic medicine skill feats, including battle medicine and continual recovery. We're also going to be pretty high in survival, so we're going to be able to take Legendary Guide, which will help our allies move faster during exploration. And that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Pathfinder 2nd Edition teamwork content. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. But if you really want to support me and get a cool character sheet for this build at the same time, you can pledge to me on Patreon at Team Leader or higher. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, teamwork is vital.